Thank you for the kind introduction, Tammy.
Thank you.
My name is Hunter Ray, and I'm with Arkansas Against Common Core, and I'm really proud to be here on behalf of Curtis Coleman this evening. And I'll tell you a few other reasons why. But I first want to say thank you to the Saline County Tea Party, Mr. Harrison, Mr. Benham, Mr. Johnson. It was because of them that I actually got involved with Arkansas Against Common Core. I first saw this hit my kitchen table at my second grade at the time, and I was not happy, but I was alone. I did not know anybody else was seeing the same things that I was, and was feeling the same way. And the Saline County Tea Party had a couple of people come down and speak about this issue. And so I really got informed at that point and found a group to really connect with and start digging deeper. And we formed a board and really started getting after it. And now we are racing across the state, almost as much as Curtis Coleman. No, not anywhere near Curtis Coleman. But we are sure trying to get as far and wide across the state as we can. We've actually even gone into Tennessee and Louisiana to help some people down there as well, to inform them about what's happening. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. You bet. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We found those in our most important founding document. Now, how do those relate specifically to the topic of education? Well, what we really should be doing in our educational system is helping children to really find out what real liberty means and help them to find what their skill set is, what their natural path is toward happiness, toward their pursuit of happiness, and not what we're finding ourselves in. What we are facing, ladies and gentlemen, tonight is a multi-pronged attack. And what their ultimate goal is, we are finding out more and more every day, is to create human capital pathways, not to help these poor children find out what they're really good at and how they can use those creative God-given talents to pursue their own happiness. And so what has happened is, and this is not a political issue, we have guilty parties on both sides, but it is something that everybody can unite around, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, an independent, a fierce independent like I am, but totally sold out for Curtis Coleman. But it is a multi-pronged attack, and it has to do with charter schools, and it has to do with assessment testing, and it has to do with standards, and it has to do with curriculum. And so it's not just the opponents or the proponents of this would have you believe this is only a set of standards. Okay? Please don't fall for that. This is basically the Obamacare of education, and it is attacking every single front of the education system. I want you to walk away with a couple really important things tonight, since I just have 10 minutes and I don't want to eat into Curtis's time. But what I want to make sure you walk away with is that this was not state-led. There was absolutely no oversight. This was basically done with two trade groups that got together. They hired a third party to write a new set of standards called the Common Core State Standards Initiative. And this is another thing I want to make sure you take away. This is an initiative, an agenda. It is not simply just standards. And they were not state-led. There was no involvement in any way, shape, or form. And so what happened was, President Obama, when he just came into office, we had this little thing called No Child Left Behind, which apparently nobody really seemed to like. And they wanted to push this new thing called Common Core. Well, to get the states to do that, they went to the states and they said, we've got a lot of money. Because if you remember back at that time, we were really struggling financially, weren't we? All the states were. We were in a deep recession, and the states needed a lot of money because they lost a lot of tax base. And so the Obama administration said, we've got $4 billion for you here, but the only string is you're going to have to accept some new educational standards. Now, I want you to know every single state that did this did so without the standards having even been written. And to me, as a father who has been deeply impacted by this, that is egregious negligence. To ask someone to do something without even knowing what it was that they were accepting.
Obamacare.
Yes, sir. Yeah, they had to know what it was. They had to pass it to find out what it was. And so that's what happened. Now, the other big thing that I want to make sure you walk away with tonight is this issue of privacy in our children. The state, and every state, has created a state database. And it's called a longitudinal database. Every state has one, and they are identical. And this way, you know, the federal government is prohibited, as you well know, from creating any sort of national database. So what they did was, very sneakily, they got a third party to fund this, and our own state of Arkansas got about $10 million worth of grant money, and they created it. Now, there was already one there, okay? I want you to know that too. They were already getting some information, but it was aggregate information, okay? And so they did create that database. There are 400 data points that they will be collecting. Now, the Department of Education in Arkansas has been telling our legislators and our population that they're only getting aggregate data, and moreover, they are not sharing it with anyone. That is a half-truth, because here's what happens. This third party, PARC is what it's called. They are the assessment consortium that will now be testing our children starting next month. They collect this data, and then all the government entities and third parties that are quote-unquote research partners will then access that database. And it is, and the PARC agreement that the state of Arkansas signed said that they must produce individually identifiable student-level data. Now, if you just let your mind run wild for just 1 second, you can absolutely understand how this information will be used against our children, especially when the Department of Labor says, we want to take our workforce data and combine it with these state educational databases to create human capital pathways. And they say that they want to start doing that as early as 3rd grade. I was in Russellville doing one of these presentations, and heard the most heartbreaking thing. A mother came and shared with us that her son, who had always wanted to be a marine biologist, and he even wore a wetsuit around, all the time, pretending that he was out, discovering something new that God had created, way under the sea. And he came home one day, and they had been given some assessments. And he was told that there was no way that was something that he could do. And it broke his heart. Single-handedly crushed his dreams. 6th grade. To me, that's not the pursuit of happiness and liberty. So that's what we're up against. So I want to make sure that you know that there's a tremendous loss of privacy that is going to be happening. Okay. There's some other things too. Whether you are a public school person, or you're a charter school proponent, or you're a private school proponent, here's what's happening now. The main publisher of all textbook information, which is called Pearson, they are an English company, and they pretty much control about 90% of all the educational materials that are produced, okay? So they have all aligned to the Common Core. Well, what are homeschoolers going to do if all their curriculum is aligned to Common Core? There will be no more, okay? And so what if you're a private schooler? Well, what are you going to do with textbooks if there are no more textbooks that are being produced? In fact, I just took my children out of public school and put them in a private school here in Little Rock. And I've already been talking to that board and saying, okay guys, what are you going to do here? Are you just going to go simply buy a zillion hardback textbooks so that the children all coming behind can have this? Or do you own digital copyrights? Are you preparing for this? As a private schooler too, you've got to think about accreditation. Even though they're not necessarily under the direct thumb of the Department of Education, they still enjoy the opportunity to be accredited because it gives them greater visibility and what's the word I'm looking for here?
Credibility.
Credibility. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, I'm a man, I've spoken all my words out for today. But the other thing too is charter schools. And I have spent about the last 3 months at the Department of Education board meetings, State Board of Education board meetings. And in one day alone, there were 15 applications for charter schools. Now, I kind of get that because I'm aware, painfully aware of how poor condition the Little Rock and Pulaski County schools are in. 15 in one day. And I thought at first, no, this is a good thing, okay? Because we're bringing some competition into the marketplace, and competition's always good. I know Curtis wholeheartedly believes in competition, because that's what makes America great. That's what gives us a multitude of products and better products and choice. And we absolutely should have choice, especially when it comes to education, but we never have. And so I thought, well, the introduction of all these charter schools, this is a good thing. But I'm firmly opposed to it, with a couple exceptions. But here's why the federal government told UNESCO, and if you don't know about UNESCO, you need to get to know who they are, because our federal Department of Education told them in 2009 that they were going to do 4 things for them on behalf of the American government. And then you had some people like Bill Gates that came in and partnered with UNESCO. But they are not at all in favor of building nationality within our country, for sure, or any country. But they want charter schools because there are 2 reasons. Charter schools do not have a board, and that means there's no accountability to parents and no place for parents to come and air their grievances and say that they don't like something and say, hey, we need to have this changed. And the second is there's really no curriculum oversight. The only thing that I can tell by attending 3 straight months at the state board is that they are concerned about 2 things when it comes to charter schools, and that is how much diversity is there and how much free and reduced lunch can they provide. And that's really about it. They don't get involved in the standards. I don't even know how they determine if one is in fiscal distress, or not fiscal distress, but academic distress or not. So we've really got to be careful about this charter school push, and it's huge. There's even going to be one in Fountain Lake, Arkansas right now, which sits in between Hot Springs and Hot Springs Village. They have basically converted the middle school into a charter school. I just confirmed this with Bruce Westerman. I was absolutely shocked. And so there are a couple of reasons why charter schools could be good if they allow anyone to attend that charter school. So in other words, like a voucher program where you take your tax dollars and whoever's providing the best product for your child, you're able to divert those funds there. So if it's open to all, then I can see that being a good thing. And if there's some sort of board that provides accountability to the stakeholders, all right, so that we have control over the education that our children are receiving. Well, I normally talk about these things for about an hour and a half, but I boiled this down into 10 minutes. And I want you to, and I assume that I'm speaking to the choir here, and that you're all huge Curtis Coleman supporters. But as Tammy said, it is vitally important that you take your money, or if you're like me and you just put your kids in private school and you have no more money, but you got some time and you got some social media skills, Curtis needs us hard and heavy until May 20th. And then on from that. I firmly believe that he will get the nomination and that he will defeat Mr. Ross in the general primary. I wholeheartedly believe that, but we can't stop because we're just at the forefront of this. And if we allow this to get any deeper, it will be so deep that we cannot get out, I'm afraid. And if you're a history reader and lover at all, you've seen what's happened to countries when they let their educational system be taken over by the central government. It is a bad thing. So, but we need someone who's extremely strong, who's got a spine of a redwood, I like to say about Curtis, to stand up against these lobbyists and the deep-seated educational interests in our state that don't want to hear from parents at all. We need someone who's really, really strong, and absolutely someone who has a plan. That's why I was never really drawn to politics much until I met Mr. Coleman. And I appreciated so much the fact that he actually has a plan for every single issue that is in front of him. And he has thought this out, and he knows exactly what to do and what we need to turn us around. So I wholeheartedly hope that you will strongly support Mr. Coleman in every way that you can. Thank you so much.